Want to achieve network marketing success? Then you're in the right company. Hello, and welcome to Leave Nothing to Chance, hosted by networking marketing giant John Solleder. Learn everything you need to know about the network marketing space from somebody who's actually done it. Join us every week for front row seats as we feature some of the finest and most successful personalities in network marketing. Leave nothing to chance. Join us now.
Well, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome a long-term friend of mine from the other side of the pond, Mr. Scott Lucy, to the Leaving Nothing to Chance program today. Scott, how are you?
I'm well, John, and it's really good of you to invite me on the call. Thank you so much.
Well, Scott, I know you've had a multitude of careers and success in a number of different avenues that we'll talk about today. But of course, most of our audience are people, like ourselves that are associated with the network marketing or leveraged marketing or multi-level marketing or direct selling or whatever you want to call it industry. How long have you been involved? I know it's a long time.
I first got involved in March of 1984. Which was with a company we may know of called Herbalife, and they were in their pre-launch activities in the UK. At the time, I had a construction business. I was only 26 years old, but I got that from my father basically, and was working in that. And I got a call from a friend I used to play racquetball with, and he said, "We need to meet tonight for a pint of beer after work. I'm going to show you how you can become a millionaire." I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" He said, "I'm not going to tell you on the phone." He said, "You've got to come." So that was my initial induction to Herbalife, and we worked on a pre-launch basis, and finally the launch was in May of '84, and we got on the call with Mark and Larry Thompson, Mark Hughes and Larry Thompson, the kind of owner and #1 distributor trainer, and they said, "Look, if you guys can put 500 people in a hotel room, we'll fly across to the UK and we'll start to really get this thing going." So by May the 5th of '84, we put 700 people in a room in Heathrow Airport in the Skyline Hotel. I'll never forget it. And it was the most amazing experience. But you had to bring everybody. So I even got my mother, I got my auntie. It's like anyone you could get to come, to fill the building up. But it was an amazing experience. And from that day on, I was hooked. That's it. It started there. And well, as you know, we're still friends with Larry Thompson to this day. It's an amazing man, and amazing experience that was.
Matter of fact, just had lunch with him last Thursday. So
you did,
yeah, he's going strong. He's getting up there in years, but he's still going strong. And he's probably going to shoot me for saying he's getting up there in years. But anyway, aren't we all? God, we've known each other since '92.
'92, yeah, exactly. With Lifestyles when you were in England.
Yeah, good old days when I lived in the UK. It almost seems like another lifetime ago. It's so long ago, but I loved living over there. I had a great time. And
you were near Epping, weren't you? Sort of Epping Forest up around North London, right? Weren't you?
Matter of fact, I had a distributor who, he and his wife, he was Canadian, his wife was British, and they had a beautiful home. And when I came over there to work, I was staying in hotels, and they said, "Well, yeah, why don't you just take the upper floor of our house? And you're going to be working with us anyway, every day," because they were basically, they were second line to me. They were underneath a buddy of mine from California. And they said, "Why don't you just stay here?" And I did. I moved in with them. I was like their third kid. I don't think they liked feeding me. I ate a lot more than their normal kids did. But it was great because it was right near the train station. So sure. I could get on the train and go, as you well know, with the tube and everything in London.
Yeah.
You can get all over the country, So I loved it though. I miss those days. It was
well, it's a very different city these days, I can assure you. But,
oh yeah.
That was the heyday of London.
Oh yeah, it was certainly fun. So Scott, when we talk about self-development, you can't have had the success in your career that you've had without it. Do you remember maybe the first book that you read on self-development?
Well, not only do I remember it, but I've still got it. And I knew you were going to ask me this. It's called See You at the Top by Zig Ziglar. And I was invited to go to see him live. And then you see inside the front page or the page there, It's at the Lancaster Gate Hotel, which is coincidentally where we used to have our Herbalife meetings, on the 17th of July 1980, and Zig Ziglar signed it to me. His autograph is in there. That was the book that really started to change we didn't have motivational books in the UK. You know, we didn't really know much about that subject at all. I later went on to sort of discover Maxwell Maltz, and I went on to discover, you know, some of the biggest sort of hits in psychology and pseudopsychology. But this was the one that kicked it off for me, and I'm still very happy to keep it to this day. Zig was an amazing man, and the way he told his stories and his analogies made it very simple, like flea training, for instance. You might remember that. Mm-hmm. But this was I learned it almost off by heart, and would actually do these trainings from his book at meetings in London, and people would be mesmerized, you know, never heard anything like this. And that's really what gave me the confidence to do public speaking, and to get that feedback from people. They'd never heard this kind of thing before. I was very, very fortunate. But I've had libraries of this stuff, you know, and I've been fortunate enough to mix with some of the biggest leaders in the industry as well. So yeah, it's a constant learning curve. It never stops, does it, John? I mean, it's personal development is essential. And I think, you know, it gives you a really good balance in life. It allows you to learn to listen better. And I think that was a key for me. You know, we kind of babble when we're younger, but I learned to listen and find out and ask pointed questions now and then that would reveal so much more to me about the people I was working with. And that enabled me to support them in the best way I could.
Well, you know, it's amazing you bring up Zig, because I've shared this story with, I don't remember who, somebody I interviewed, but Zig, of course, you know, was a Dallas guy, and I became a Dallas guy after many years. I moved down here in 1993 or 4. I don't even remember. It's a long time ago. But my gym, I was going to a little private gym that one of my distributors in the company that I was helping to run down here owned over on a Beltline Road in Dallas, if you know where that is. And one Saturday morning, one of the guys in the gym goes, "Oh, there's Zig Ziglar." There was a beauty salon next door to the gym, and he always referred to his wife as the redhead.
That's right, the redhead.
And he got out of his Cadillac. He walked over to her door. He opened the door. He took her by the elbow. He walked her into the beauty salon, and then he left for, I don't know, probably the better part of an hour. And then he came back, and we watched the same sequence of events. He met her at the door. He walked her back to the car. He opened the car door and, you know, guided her back into the car.
Yeah.
And they were much younger than obviously Zig's passed away since then, but it wasn't a health thing. It was that Zig was as real when the lights weren't on as when they were.
He was a very nice man. Yeah.
He was a great guy, great teacher. But Scott, let me ask you this. Let's just say that they show up there at your home today in England and they say, "Scott, listen, we know the weather in the UK isn't too great in January. So we're going to take you to a beautiful island, plenty of water, plenty of food, plenty of good wine, even plenty of everything. However, you're limited on what you can bring. You can only bring 3 books with you." What would the 3 books be?
Wow. That's an interesting one. Well, I definitely, you know, See You at the Top is one that really inspired me. And that's why I've kept it for 40 plus years, you know. So that's definitely going to come with me anyway. I think the Bible is an important book. I'd definitely bring the Bible with me. That supports me in times when it was tough, and also inspires me. So that would definitely be in there. And the third one is quite a recent one, actually. It's called Sapiens. I don't know if you've come across that book, but it's a really interesting read. It's written by a psychologist and professor, and it's really the study of our species and the way we kind of, how we work, how we live, how we interact, what are our motivations. Really good book, Sapiens. So yes, those 3, I think.
Who is it by?
A Brief History of Humankind by Yuval Noah, as in Noah Ark. Yuval Noah Harari, Harari. It's a 1 million copy bestseller. Really, really cool. I don't know if this is a good thing or not, but there's a quote at the bottom of the book. It says, "I would recommend Sapiens to anyone who's interested in the history and future of our species," by Bill Gates. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's very interesting. It's also a quote on the back: "Interesting and provocative, gives you a sense of perspective on how briefly we've been on this earth." Barack Obama. So yeah, those three. I know a little bit strange, but I think because, as I said to you, that my first book, See You at the Top, was the one that really turned me on to possibilities of life and understanding motivation and goal setting, etc. The Bible for all of the right reasons, and yeah, Sapiens.
Right.
So maybe an odd choice, but there we are.
Well, I know you're a fan of another writer, not quite with 1 million copies sold, but that's of myself and my buddy Foster Owusu.
Indeed,
a little bit.
I've got that right here now. Leave nothing to chance.
And in that book, Leave Nothing to Chance, Scott, is there a concept or a chapter that really stands out to you? And if so, why?
Yes, definitely. Chapter 4, Principle 4, create balance. It's the key to staying on track. And I read both of your perspectives on that. Absolutely important. You know, having raised 2 children with a family in London, and spending that quality time that our industry allows you to do at home, and to see how those kids have turned out now. I mean, my daughter's 34. She's a cruise director on the largest ship in the world, on the Oasis of the Seas. And my son has just had his company valued at £2.5 million. And he started that from scratch with 200 pounds and an old laptop.
Wow.
So, you know, I guess that quality time that was spent with my wife and I and the children, you know, that we took them to school together, we read to them at nighttime together, we took them on adventures. That was a great gift. And the balance was that, you know, I could go to my home office, and sit and work, and the kids respected that too, because they knew that Daddy was going to give them good stuff afterwards, right? So there was that balance or trade-off, however you want to put it, you know, allowed us to function as a family really well. And I'm just blessed that I found that industry, our industry, because I don't think there's any other way. I watch my friends, you know, getting on trains at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, commuting into London, not getting back till the same time in the evening, missing everything about their kids, you know. So no, I think it's balance is really key, you know, family, spiritually, you know, self-development, meeting new people, you know, stretching yourself at every opportunity. That's all such good stuff, and I think it's summed up in that particular chapter, John.
Thank you. Well, you know, it's funny that you say that, because, you know, interviewing now 60 some odd people on these shows, and in some cases knowing their kids, like, for example, our mutual friend Simon Brooks, right, who we met through Simon, I think, all those years ago. I think we were in Birmingham the first time we met, but may have been London. But you know, his son Fraser, of course, grew up in the business, and I've interviewed Fraser, and he's telling me things that his father used to quote me saying when he was a little boy. You know, and I found the same thing with Carissa Rogers, who's doing real well in the industry in Florida. Her mother was one of my distributors in a past company, and she tells me stories about when I used to come and take her mother and her dad and her out to lunch before meetings when she was a little kid, and she's like, I learned this from you and that from you, and I'm saying, wow. And you don't realize the impact, but more important than that, what you just said, the fact that all of our kids are growing up around self-development, because our industry does, if it does nothing else well, and it does a lot of things well in my opinion, but if it does nothing else well, it gets people to hear Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn.
Exactly.
You go down the list, Les Brown, on and on and on, all of these great authors and speakers and people who believe in self-development. Of course, Dr. Napoleon Hill, and we can go on and on and on. But if I had never gotten into network marketing, I don't know if I ever would have heard any of those guys.
No, absolutely wouldn't have done. No.
And to your point, with both of your kids being as successful as they are, even though they're not in our industry, they grow up around those concepts that they've applied to other things, and it's such a great value,
Yeah, for sure.
But Scott, you are not a one-dimensional guy, because you had a whole nother career that you rarely talk about, but I'm going to get you to talk about it. I know one of my father, who's been gone now, a long time, one of his favorite shows was the Benny Hill Show.
Right.
And I grew up watching Benny Hill, and man, that guy was funny. But I know you worked with him and you were on the show, and tell us about that whole experience of Scott Lucy, the actor, the thespian.
Well, that's interesting, because it was around about the same time that I went to see Zig Ziglar. It was actually around 1980 that I'd moved to a town in south of London called Bromley, and I didn't know anyone. And I found in the library an advertisement for people to support the local amateur dramatic group. So I went along to this. It's called the Bromley Little Theatre. And cut a long story short, I started working in the bar and got to know a few people, and it's all voluntary. And then I started reading some scripts, and I got my first part on stage with a play called The Ghost Train. And I only had one line in it, and the lead actor said I was like a policeman. So he said, "You got them all, Jackson?" I said, "Yes, sir, I think so." And that was my only line in the whole play. But I just loved the experience. So I went on reading, and I found that I really enjoyed it, and I was pretty good at it. I got some lead roles. And then I got invited to join up with a lady called Carol Crowther, who had a company called Clown Cavalcade. And she basically ran clown troupes that would go out on events. And so we got invited to the Lord Mayor's show in London. This was 81. And she had me dressed up with this big sort of broken top hat and a pair of big boots and a bicycle that went up and down when you rode it. It was a real, what they call the Agus clown, the wild clown, the crazy clown. And we were at this big event in Dagenham in Essex, and they had a military bands, and it was a huge event for the summer. And the Lord Mayor of London flew in by helicopter, and he went up and sat on the Lord Mayor's stand and all his dignitaries. And at this point, I ran across the middle of the arena, and the guy on the PA systems going, "Whoa, what's the clown doing? What's the clown doing?" And I ran up the stairs, and I sat on the lap of the Lord Mayor of London with a big bag of toffees, right? I would have probably been shot these days by a sniper rifle, but in those days it was a little less. And that photograph, the press took a photograph of the clown sitting on the mayor's lap with these toffees, and it got on the front page of the Evening Standard, which was the London newspaper. And the lady that owned the company, Clown Cavalcade, Carol, said, "I don't care whatever you do," she said, "you have deserved a full equity contract." Now, in those days, to get an actor's equity contract, you had to do 40 weeks in professional work. But in order to do 40 weeks in professional work, you had to have an equity contract. It was a catch-22. She just wrote me an open 40-week contract. So at the end of those 40 weeks, I got my equity card. And that's how I got into television. That's how I met Mr. Benny Hill, and ended up actually working with, you might remember Hugh Laurie, who in America became famous for Dr. House. So I worked with Hugh in a thing called Bomber Pilot. I was his brother. And with Anthony Hopkins, The Silence of the Lambs, Sir Anthony Hopkins, I should say now. But in those days, he was Tony. In 83, we sat on the back steps of the theatre, drinking tea and having bacon sandwiches. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I loved it. I think I could have made a bigger career out of it, but the children came along and I had to get serious, because unless you're making big money in acting, you can't support a family. So I kind of left it behind at that point, John. But I've continued in a way that I like to do presenting. I really enjoy public speaking. I do TV work still in terms of promoting property videos and travel videos and things like that, which you can find them all over YouTube. They're everywhere.
well, I do have to ask you. I mean, you know, Sir Anthony Hopkins sitting around eating bacon sandwiches with him. Did he have? I mean, you know, we talk about visionaries like you know, Zig Ziglar and all the guys we just mentioned in our world. A guy in that world, did he have the vision of what he ultimately would become? Probably our greatest living actor at this point. I can't think of anybody quite at his level.
Do you know, it's interesting because at that point he was in a very destructive marriage. He was pretty much an alcoholic. He wasn't a very happy person at all. And it was shortly after that, I think it was about 84, 85, that he got out of that situation. He decided to change his life. He realized that he was going to kill himself if he carried on. I think a lot of that was part of his dysfunctional relationship, which he left. And well, the rest is history, as we say, from the Silence of the Lambs onwards. But he's currently back in the UK. He has a home here and a home in the States, and he flips between Wales, his you know, where he started out, and yeah, I mean, he's also an amazing composer. I don't know if you know that. Composes classical music. He plays the piano beautifully, and I think, yeah, he really turned his life around. I mean, he and Richard Burton both came from the same town in Wales.
Oh, I didn't know that. I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah, they did. And you know, they came from pretty poor backgrounds. You know, they had to fight their way out of the colliery. The coal industry was down there. You know, that's where you either went in the mines or, well, they went on stage. So it was different, you know. But no, fascinating man, really, really very inspirational guy.
Well, it's always amazed me when I come to the UK, and I will go see the Royal Shakespeare Company the whole week sometimes when I'm there. And what's amazing to me is the versatility of the actors in the UK. And I'm not diminishing our talent over here. We got a lot of talented people on this side of the pond. But what was amazing to me, and this is probably going back about when we met 30 plus years ago, I spent a week and I watched the Royal Shakespeare Company literally do different shows every night for 5 nights in a row. And the same actors, same cast, right? Where one night you saw a guy and he was a villain. The next night he was a comedian. The next night he might have been a troubadour. The next night, you know, who knows, right? Based on whatever Shakespeare play they were doing. It's just amazing to me, the versatility of the actors. And I think it's one of the reasons why, you know, you've been successful in another industry. And I bet there's a lot of other people in the UK that are, because I believe that you learn how to speak properly and communicate at such a level when you have acting in your background. Love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree. Certainly from a public speaking perspective. I mean, because you have to project, you don't have to shout on stage, you have to project your voice. You know, it's a kind of a different technique. So I'm able to kind of communicate in quite a large room without necessarily using a microphone. And one of the other thing is, of course, we all start off having fear of public speaking. I mean, it's a terrifying thing the first time you get to do it in a big crowd with lights on you and this silent audience. You know, it's tough. But I was taught to look at the back of the room, not at any particular eye line, and that helped a lot. Now I think over the years I've honed that, and I can work with a group of 25, and I can eyeball the people in the front row. It doesn't bother me anymore. But from that perspective, to project your voice rather than shout, that was something that gave me a resonance and a way to communicate, and the use of pause in conversation that you can use that very effectively to make a point, you know, not to speak too quickly, to use short phrases, I think was also important. And I mean, you talked about Shakespeare. I mean, incredibly, I also have a connection with that story. Did I ever tell you that?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so it's quite interesting because my ancestral family home is called Charlecot Park, which is in Warwickshire, and one of my ancestors, a guy called Sir Thomas Lucy, and Sir Thomas Lucy was a QC, he's a Queen's Counsellor, High Court judge, if you like, and he had the sheriff of Warwickshire, like the police force, the sheriff brought 3 boys to Sir Thomas Lucy for judgment because they'd been stealing deer, venison, the meat. They'd been stealing deer out of the park. And one of those boys' name was William Shakespeare. And Sir Thomas Lucy is quoted in writings that he said, because I know your father, I'm not going to send you to the penitentiary. I'm going to send you to your uncle in London, away from these bad boys of influence. And that's how Shakespeare ended up in London. But in his play, The Merry Wives of Windsor, he writes about Justice Shallow, and they think that reference is to Sir Thomas Lucy. So that's a clear. So next time you're actually over, I mean, I'll take you to the Shakespeare Theatre in Warwick, the real one in Warwickshire. We'll do that tour, but it's fascinating.
Great. So let's come back now full circle to leverage marketing, network marketing, whatever we want to call it these days. I'm hearing so many different terms, and everybody's talking about having a side gig and having this, that, and the other thing. But you've been around the industry a long time. And you've seen a lot of changes technologically and everything else. But let me ask you this. There's a lot of people that have never considered our industry.
Yes.
And I'll give you it this way, Scott. Let's just say there's a dad and his son. And the son's about 25, the dad's about 60. And they've never looked at it. Dad was maybe a upper level manager for a company, did well, getting to that age when you start thinking about, hanging it up and hitting golf balls or catching more fish or whatever. And the son's well educated, went to university, got good grades, started his business career, and then we know what happened just about 2+ years ago, right? This little thing called a pandemic. And all of a sudden, both of their plans changed. Both of their circumstances changed. They never looked at network marketing, never even considered it, wasn't even on their radar. And now all of a sudden, they're at that point where they realize that they have to do something in addition to whatever it is they're doing to make a living right now. So they look at our industry for the first time, but they say, hey, Scott, I want your counsel to do so. What's your advice to the 25-year-old first off and the 60-year-old secondly?
Wow. Well, I think, the 25-year-old, I would say, is kind of college, university age group, right? I mean, the thing that age group suffer the most with is their finances. And also they have great connections because they're always partying and together and, living together, sharing rooms, sharing experiences in college and university. And they all have a similar sort of anxiety about financial issues, about their workload. And so I think, you can turn the heads at that age and say, look, here's something that you can build amongst your peer group, have fun with. You've got to find the right product that suits you guys. You've got to find, a little bit of guidance in terms of which compensation plan is going to suit you best. But, do your research, find something that turns you on and you think will suit your lifestyle, and then build it slowly. Build it in a way that, we talked about. One of my favorite network marketing training books was with Don Feiler. You remember Don and Nancy, with the 10 napkin presentations, and they explain that so well that a 10-year-old child could understand. Building a brick at a time, building deep foundations, and you kind of explain that to them, that this is not it's not a 100-meter race, it's a marathon. You know, you're handing off, you're building your structure, you're working with people that you like, that you trust, and all of those good things build the foundations of a business. Don't rush it, guys. You've got time. We're looking at a 3 to 5 year deal to get yourself into a good situation where you can be maintaining probably a income of around $4,000 to $5,000 a month, or £4,000 to £5,000 a month, if I'm talking from an English point of view. You should be able to generate that in that period. So you can continue with your coursework, you can continue with whatever you're doing, but build this along the side. For dad, for the retiree, 60, you know, I mean, I know of, I won't mention companies, but I know of one man who was a retired butcher in Phoenix, Arizona. He started with a network marketing company at the age of 72. He's 89 now. And during that time, with him and his family have taken $40 million out of that business.
Oh.
So yes, he had a great experience with network marketing previously. He did have some great contacts, and he was a great trainer. So, you know, I would say as a retired or semi-retiree, you have to look at that person's background. You have to work on finding out what skills they have from their, you know, all of the years they've worked for 40 years, let's say, and then focus on those issues that those strengths they have, and also to find out what their motivation is. You know, if they want to, as you say, they want to catch more fish or they want to play more golf, you know, let's start to work through the golfing fraternity. Oh my goodness, I mean, that's a great way to meet people, right? You get 4 hours, well, 5 for me, but usually 4 hours to walk around and have, you know, meaningful conversations with your great friends with no disruption. So, you know, from a retiree's perspective, it's a very casual business, over lunch, over beers, over sport, over in the gym. Well, like the way you do it, John, with such grace, you know, I mean, that's the key to it, right? So I think that's the slightly different approach, but for the same goals, you know.
So let me ask you one other thing here, Scott, because like myself, you've been at this a long time. You've seen, you know, like I have, like everybody, well, not everybody, because there's younger people obviously listening to the call, but like, you know, when we started way back, you know, like you mailed an application into the home office.
Sure.
You know, you stuck it in an envelope and you mailed it. Like when I started in '83, I lived in New Jersey. I would mail it to California, and I would hope somebody actually opened the envelope and put the person's information in. I think we had to put I think we bought the distributor kits and we resold them. So yeah, but we started to send the applications in to go into the system. I mean, today it's like, you know, you pick up your phone and you know, it's like, we've seen all of those changes. But what would you say the greatest innovation has been in our industry since the time we started with, you know, mailing applications into the home office and hoping somebody put them in a computer, to today where everything is, you know, basically done from either a laptop or a cell phone? How do you think that has not only the greatest innovation itself, but also how do you think that that's changed how fast somebody could grow a network marketing distributorship versus the old days when we had so many logistical nightmares to overcome?
Well, it's really about, it's still about preparation. I think you have to be learning certain skills to communicate well on social media. I think that's first of all important. The fact that we've got less barriers that we had before, the global village, you know, most of the software that drives the compensation plans is seamless. You can have, you know, accounts in people in many different countries purchasing product directly from their local warehouse and in their own language, and then you still collect royalties on it. So that's very exciting, and it really is global now. I mean, it started in the United States and then came to England. Now it's massive in Southeast Asia, in Japan, in India. I mean, Eastern Europe, again, across to South America. I mean, it's global, isn't it? It's very, very different. And, to communicate, we're fortunate, to speak English, and to communicate in English is probably the easiest. Google Translate, it was a bit kind of, as we say, Mickey Mouse when it first came out, but now you can write, quite a long letter if you wish, and then just press the button and it'll translate it into any number of languages very accurately. I've actually had people comment saying your Spanish grammar is so good now, Scott. Little do they know it's Google. But no, that's a great tool. I think, strange things have happened. I mean, back in those days in the 80s, we would go through the telephone directories, which gave everybody's name, address, telephone number, and you could call people. Now that's gone because of GPDR. You can't have any of that information. But strangely enough, we have this thing called Facebook now, where people tell you their education, what food they like, what sports they like, who their family are, who their friends are. Everything about them is kind of crazy. And you can work through some fantastic groups on Facebook where, if you're a fisherman or you're a golfer or whatever you are, you're, stay-at-home mom, you can connect with people in those groups. And just by learning how to interact in a social environment. So I always try and say, look, imagine you were walking into a hotel lobby and there's a drinks party on your favorite subject, whether that be fishing or art or whatever. And your job is to go around in 30 seconds and introduce yourself to everybody in the room, right? So it's not about pitching them in the business. It's about just making that introduction and finding out if there's any commonality. And then you shortlist your people down, right? And that's the same way you do things on Facebook and social media. So, if your business is expanding to a new country, what we do in the UK, for instance, is we'll reach out to, let's say, the Hispanic communities in London, who obviously speak English because they're living in England, and we can start that communication saying, look, this is what it's about. Take that story back to your country. Or that could be Polish, or that could be Hungarian, or that could be any other language. So I think it's much more exciting in that respect now. You can build your business a lot faster. Really, really quickly, because the technology we allow, even doing what we're doing now. These Zoom calls, fantastic. WhatsApp, it's all free. I remember when I was a kid, my great aunt was living in New York, and my mother and father would call her once every 3 months. And you had to call the telephone exchange and book the time of the call. And it was very expensive to make that call. They had to connect the operators to amazing, and we now just do FaceTime on these WhatsApps and different channels. It's incredible, isn't it? So it's a long answer to your short question, but I think that's what I believe. It's probably more exciting now than ever.
It really is. But yeah, I'm thinking back when you're saying that. I had an uncle that used to have an egg timer next to the phone, and and when his wife would call, now this was in New Jersey to New Jersey, so this wasn't international, right? This was even out of state, but because the phone bill was so expensive, this is back in the 60s and 70s.
Sure.
It was so expensive. It was like, hey, 5 minutes, you call your brother or your sister. Hey, how are you? How are the kids? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, gotta go. Because 5 minutes was probably $5, back then. It is amazing. It really is amazing. So Scott, just in kind of wrapping up here, we're into a new year here. Interesting year. We're certainly living in some interesting times. What's your advice for people listening to us as far as their outlook going forward after the last couple of years, what we've all cumulatively been through, not only in England and the United States, but throughout the world? How should they get their thinking right, I guess, is the real question. I know you're an eternal optimist.
I am.
How do they get themselves there during those dark moments when there's another report about another variant or another whatever that comes along, right? how do they get their thinking right so that they don't dwell on things that they have zero control over and dwell on the things that they do have control over?
Well, the mind is the human mind is a very interesting thing. You cannot have a positive and a negative thought at the same time. It's impossible. You think of something really negative, then look up at the sky and smile and try and keep that negative thought. It's very difficult. You can't. So I avoid mainstream media apart from highlights, just so I'm aware of what's going on generally, but I don't listen to the in-depth news channels regurgitating all this, I'm going to say BS, but you know what I mean. I think a lot of it is, to me anyway. So I focus, the fortunate thing is there are alternatives. There's an enormous amount of archive footage, and you talked about Jim Rowan, wonderful teacher on changing your attitude, etc. So you can find all of this free to listen to on YouTube, on podcasts. There's masses and masses of it, of course. So I think that's important. You have your daily kickstart in the morning. I'm an early riser. I'm usually up around 5:36 every day. I kind of tend to do my exercise and early in the morning. I'm on the calls as of 9 o'clock, just to be polite for those that don't like getting up so early. And I keep an old 7-day guide diary, right? 7-day view. I'm not very good at using the online diaries. I like to see the week ahead and write down my meeting schedules. I will always make an effort to work through some really great contacts that I've made over the years, just to say hi sometimes. How's it going? What's going on with you? Just to really reinitiate conversations with people that I really like and admire, but could have lost touch with. And, there's one particular man we've talked together about, Ron Holland, right? Ron is a great author and motivator. And, I talk to Ron at least once a week. We share ideas, and you and I, it's like, keeping these long-term friendships from colleagues and people that you get on with in life, and see where other opportunities arise, and see where if I'm feeling a little down, I can call and say, look, I'm feeling not so good right now. What do you advise? And you get this feedback from those positive people around you, don't you? So I think that's important. I think having your goals, your business goals, your family goals, your spiritual goals written down. I think, I've got my week in view, I've got my month targets, I've got my quarterly targets, I've got my annual target. I never kind of work more than 3 years ahead. One of my stickers in here right now, it's my 65th birthday coming up in January next year, not this year. I'm 64 this year, but I've got myself down for the Roll Cruise on the 2023 18 nights on the Seven Seas Splendor, which is one of the most prestigious cruise lines in the world, and that's my 65th birthday present. So, nice. I'm kind of working on good goals, things I reward myself with, things I can do for family and friends. So that's how I keep myself going. And I think, it's paid off. This year already in January, I have 5 proposals out there for consulting work. And that's, while people are still on vacation from Christmas.
Well, that's the old thing. You snooze, you lose, right?
You snooze, you lose. Exactly, John. Yeah.
Well, that's great. So let me do my little commercial here. So
sure.
leavingnothingtochance.com, on Spotify, on iTunes, every single Tuesday. And amazing guests like Scott Lucy. If you're not familiar with the show, my name is John Solleder, and I'm the author of Moving Up 2020, which hard to believe, Scott, that book's been out now for 2 years.
I know. Yeah.
It's like when 2020 came and went, what a year, right?
Yeah.
And when I wrote it in 2019, I thought, wow, 2020 is going to be this amazing year. Well, I guess that sums it up either way, right? Certainly.
Well, I always think of the song by Prince, I'm looking forward to partying like it's 1999. And I forget that's 20, 25 years ago.
Exactly. Well, of course, 1999, we were a little scared too, because remember the computers were supposed to shut off at midnight. Remember that whole thing?
That's right.
That was
going to shut down.
That was the last time they scared the you-know-what out of everybody, right? for no reason. But and then of course also the author of Leave Nothing to Chance, which this show is kind of named after. But Scott, I want to give you the last word. This has been a pleasure, needless to say, and just anything else you want to share with the audience?
John, I think I have to say that thank you first of all for inviting me once again, and it's been a pleasure to work with you over the years, on and off, and Foster and some of the other great people I've met through your associations. It is still a wonderful industry, and I'm very blessed to have you and Larry Thompson, all those years to stay in touch, and that's something about the industry that has really stayed with me always. And I've got many friends here, even in the UK, for those long-term 30-35-year friendships. And we look at each other now, white hair, and think, well, what happened, but we're still positive, we're not retiring, we're not kind of giving up, and we're all in pretty good health, I think, so I still think I'm 30 something, and I don't know, it's just a great industry to be in. And I think, there are other options. You can set up yourself a Spotify account, and you can go and be an Uber driver or whatever, but nothing beats this industry, John. It really doesn't, does it?
You just said it so well. It's a unique fraternity. I think about that. You and I have been friends all these years, and Simon and I stay in touch, and some of the guys that I worked with in the UK, 30 years ago, and we don't work together. We don't work together in the same company. There's no financial reason, but we stay in touch. We follow each other's, lives going on, and kids being born, and kids growing up and having their own kids, and all that kind of stuff. So it really is. It's been a wonderful ride all these years.
It certainly has.
Well, thank you, my friend.
You're very, very welcome, John. Thank you, and bless you, and wish you well for this year ahead, right?
Likewise.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Leave Nothing to Chance. If you want to know more about what it takes to succeed in the network marketing space, join us again next week for another amazing episode. For additional resources and to connect with John Solleder, visit leavingnothingtochance.com. Don't forget to leave a review, and we'll see you next time.